watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.
After over 30 years of building the second highest volume Toyota store in the country, Al Hendrickson and his son, Al Hendrickson Jr., sold their store to Morgan Auto Group. Haig Partners, one of the leading buy-sell advisory firms in the nation, served as the exclusive sell-side advisor on the sale. And this transaction marks the highest transaction price for a single dealership. For Haig Partners, it is a third transaction since 2022 in which we have seen record prices being paid. There must be something going on there at Haig Partners, that's for sure. So on today's show, we're pleased to welcome the president and founder of Haig Partners, Alan Haig, and we're also joined in the studio by the managing director with Haig Partners, Kevin Nill. So gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here in the studio. And of course, virtually, Alan, I appreciate that very much. This is really big news for so many reasons. So Kevin, let me start with you first. You kind of led the team on the sale, right? So I know there's a lot of dealers listening as soon as they heard highest price paid, right? That's very enticing. Give us, our audience, an overview of first Al Hendrickson Toyota and kind of the overall transaction.
Thanks, Jim. You know, it was just a great family to work with. I know you've got some history with the Hendricksons going way back.
It really is. Great car.
You know, Al Sr. came from Southeast Toyota.
That's right.
And back in 1989, he was awarded a Toyota point in Coconut Creek, Florida, which is about 20 miles north of Fort Lauderdale for the audience. And at the time, that was an island in the middle of nowhere.
That's right. Yeah.
But just the tremendous population growth and the market moving that way just allowed that business to really thrive and prosper. So Al Sr. and then his son Al Jr. really continued to build that business over the years. And simultaneous with that growth, Al Jr. began to buy Sr. out of the business. And he continued to ramp it up, and as you said, ultimately drove that store up to the #2 volume Toyota dealership in the country.
Wow.
And it's an amazing market because you've got, you know, Hendrickson Toyota there, and then across the street you've got one of the largest Lexus dealerships in the country. Just down the street you've got one of the largest BMW dealerships in the country. So just that density of population and wealth, just the natural geographic boundaries that prevent other dealers from competing really helped them thrive. And so, as you said, we were fortunate enough to just sell that business to Morgan Automotive Group and set a record that we set by a large margin. So congratulations to both parties.
That's fantastic. So for 25 years of my life, I lived in South Florida, very familiar with the Al Hendrickson brand. Everybody felt as though they knew the Hendrickson family. They were in all of the marketing. They were synonymous with the auto industry.
Absolutely.
They really were. So my next question is, how did you actually get Al to decide to sell? How did that whole thing come about? How'd you connect with him?
You know, it's a great story. So Al Jr. was going through, you know, just considering his various strategic options for his family and for the future. And he was speaking with one of his bankers, Dave Snodgrass, who works for Bank of America, and just talking about whether he should buy more stores, maybe sell the store. And Dave said, you know, you really should talk to my friends over at Haig Partners. So we set up a meeting, and we go out to Al's place. He lives out at the beach down there in South Florida, and Alan and myself and another associate are there. We come in our suits and ties, and we come out there to see Al. And Al's like, where do you want to have the meeting? And we're like, wherever you'd like, Al. He said, you want to go down to the beach? We're like, sure. So
there you go.
We take our shoes off, roll up our slacks, and go out and have a several-hour meeting with Al and his president, Donna Giannicoli, and just had a great dialogue about the market, what was going on from a buy-sell perspective, what he would face if he wanted to buy more stores. And then just the valuations of these, what I would call trophy opportunities like Al Hendrickson Toyota.
That's right.
And so as we were talking about that, the conversation drifted to Charles Mon Toyota, which Group 1 had bought in 2022, which at the time set the record for the highest price ever paid for a Toyota dealership. So as Al was contemplating things, you know, he was like, look, if we move forward and I decide to sell, I'm a record guy, so we need to blow that record away.
That's for sure.
So he set the challenge for us, and we were fortunate we were able to eclipse it.
So enters Morgan Automotive Group. These guys have been on fire.
Yes.
I've interviewed Brett. Had the pleasure of interviewing him a number of times here at CBT News. They are going for it, right?
They're very aggressive in Florida.
Talk to me about that whole deal and what that's like selling to those guys.
So, you know, when a dealer decides they want to sell their store or their entire business, typically that's the most valuable asset they have in the family.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a one bite at the apple type situation.
That's right.
So if you're going to go through that, you want to maximize the value when you go through that exercise. And so for us, we feel like if a client can run a very confidential process and just going out to the right buyers and making them compete for the business, it truly drives up the value more than if they just sold it to the dealer down the street who'd been calling on them for 10 years saying, hey, when you want to sell, let me buy your store.
That's right.
So to that end, we ran our process very successfully, put together a very comprehensive set of offer materials on the business and why Al Hendrickson Toyota should be something that these buyers should focus their energy on. And we went to a number of buyers, and needless to say, they were all excited, thrilled, and very aggressive in pursuing it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, Al Jr. selected Morgan Automotive Group.
Wow.
And we've had the good fortune of working with Larry and his team on other transactions, and know them for many, many years. And just a great buyer to work with. Very seamless through the process, very skilled at it, and so we closed it, and we're excited for both parties.
Fantastic. Now, like Al, do you guys only focus on record-breaking deals? Because I mean, you've had now a number of them, so kudos to you all. But what made the dealership set the record? I mean, what was it about? What was it about that? The net profit, the land, the potential of the future in that market? But
you're nailing a lot of them. Clearly, the financial performance of a dealership is a driving factor, but there are a lot of other aspects. The type of franchise, in this case, Toyota. Toyota is probably arguably the most desirable franchise for buyers right now. They've just got great relationships with their OEMs. Location's huge. Not only is Coconut Creek what we talked about, but it's in Florida.
That's right.
And buyers want to be in Florida. Florida and Texas are like 1 and 1A as far as desirability.
That's right.
You've got no taxes, high population growth, very business friendly. So, then as it relates to that specific store, you're talking about the number 2 volume store. So there's a lot of throughput. Yeah. So you're driving used car business, F&I, service, ops, everything. So, I think buyers saw this as a chance to get one of the premier franchises in arguably the best market with a lot of continued growth and upside, and they went hard after it.
Did it sweeten the pie because you were so close to AutoNation's headquarters that they said,
there might have been a little bit of competitive desire there.
Sneak this away, and I know that Alan's an old AutoNation guy. Maybe there was something to that, right? You can go right in and take it right out of their backyard, right?
Well, Wayne Izenga, who founded AutoNation, was a longtime Fort Lauderdale resident, and I think he was a visionary in many ways. But him locating AutoNation in South Florida was good fortune for many of us.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because it is the epicenter of some of the most profitable dealerships really in the world. Yeah. And we don't see that changing. It's going to continue to go. And so we congratulate all of our dealer friends who have the good fortune to own dealerships really anywhere in Florida.
That's right. That's right. You and I have spoken, Alan, so much about the industry as a whole, the trends that we see out there. What does this sale say about the buy-sell market, given all the news that business might be slowing down? There might be some headwinds out there. There might be some things that dealers are concerned about out there that that it might not be the great years that we've had in the last 3 years, and therefore it might affect evaluations. But this doesn't seem to be the case.
I think dealers are still feeling confident about the future, Jim. I mean, that's really the key. Just like for a customer to buy a car, they have to feel confident that they're going to have a job and that it makes sense for them to take on that risk and that obligation. And I think the dealers are coming out of this pandemic, first of all, with more cash they've ever had in their lives. So they have a tremendous amount of capital that they don't want to have sitting in the bank earning them 3 to 4% interest. They want to put it to work. And I think they've seen almost every threat that could exist in business thrown at car dealerships over the past 5 years, 7 years. And these dealerships have emerged incredibly profitable and resilient. So I think it's a combination of a couple factors. One is the strength of the auto retail model. Second is all the cash they have. And I think the third is when they see a business like a Toyota, as Kevin mentioned, it's probably the most desired franchise in terms of the strength of the relations between the OEM and the factory.
Yeah, that's for sure.
We're setting records now with Toyota stores. Some of the other franchises are also equally profitable, and we're working on another transaction now that we think might even beat this record. Wow. But really it comes back down to dealer confidence. Yeah. And their belief that, we may suffer a decline in fixed ops due to EVs, but maybe not, because these EVs break too. And there may be new entrants, direct to sales, but customers still need to get their vehicle serviced. So just the strength and the flexibility of the auto retail model has really been proven out during the pandemic. And so I think there are lots of dealers who call us. Every week we're getting contacted by people saying, I would like to buy more stores. What do you have available? Please let me see what you have that you're representing. And so we feel that confidence literally every day in our business from the buyers that we're interacting with and how they compete for the businesses that we're representing.
Hey, let me get back to what you were talking about before in terms of the buyers and sellers in the marketplace right now. How's your pipeline as we sit here today? What's the appetite for buyers and sellers these days?
It's strong. It is strong. We have a number of really exciting client engagements. Kevin's leading some, I'm leading some of my other partners are leading others. And it's all across the country, from Vermont to Texas and California and Florida. We don't really see significant differences in appetites for dealerships today. Mm-hmm. California has a tougher business environment than places like Florida or Texas, but the population in that state is so massive and everybody needs cars to get around. So right. A lot of our friends in California continue to make excellent profits, even if it's a little more challenging for them than in other states. Yeah. But we've not seen any reduction in the demand for stores, even as we begin to see the profitability of stores starting to come down. Mm-hmm. When we look at the value of dealerships, they spiked during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. Profits more than tripled, but blue sky value, didn't more than triple. Yeah. Because I think that buyers knew, hey, eventually we're going to trend down a little bit here. Right. We can't stay up at these margins that are inflated because of the lack of production. But since the last, Kevin, I would say year, we've really not seen dealership values fall significantly due to reduction in profits because buyers had already been factoring in a downturn in profitability into their blue sky offers. Mm-hmm. So in our latest report, I think we mentioned that blue sky values might have declined 3% from year end through the first quarter of this year. And we expect we'll continue to see a slight decline in dealership values as the earnings come down, mm-hmm. but we're not expecting any severe drop off. Mm-hmm. So for people who are considering growing, if you're waiting for those prices to fall back to where they were, I think you're going to end up waiting forever.
Really? This is a new normal.
I don't see them going back to where they were. I feel like we've permanently been reset at a higher level. How much higher is hard to know. Some of it's just inflation, right? Yeah. But some of it also dealers have gotten better in certain areas, whether it's an F&I or, the lack of technicians that many of our dealer friends were worried about. They've adjusted that by raising their labor rates. Sure. We have some friends with dealerships in Florida and elsewhere. They're over $300 an hour now. Oh my God. On warranty and customer pay rates.
Wow.
So, we might have a decline in margins on new, but you can make up for a lot of that by charging $300 an hour in the fixed operations.
Are they having their corporate attorneys work on those cars, or what's that? That's amazing. $300 an hour.
Yeah, and they're friends of ours in Massachusetts that are also in the same area, and they've developed a system where they are pricing these to their customer pay customers. Right. And when they prove that the customers are paying these labor rates, the state law often compels the OEMs to match those customer labor rates.
Sure. Kevin, when you get that call after dealers are watching this and they've seen the press and automotive news and such that we're talking about record numbers, and obviously Al Hendrickson, which is, he bleeds Toyota, always has. When they see a guy like that get out of the business, do you think there's some dealers out there that go, well, if Al Hendrickson is selling his store and he's gotten huge numbers, maybe I should take a look at that? When you get that call from maybe a Toyota dealer mm-hmm. or a non-Toyota dealer for that matter, and says, hey, you piqued my interest here, okay? Yep. Maybe it's time. How does that initial conversation go?
Every dealer is going through a different strategic evaluation, and it might be they're aging out and they don't have succession. It might be that they're attracted to what just occurred with Al Hendrickson Toyota. So our goal is to sit down and share with them a little bit about what we're seeing in the marketplace, mm-hmm. how a process would work, how they would be benefiting from that, and then in many cases they're looking for an estimate of evaluation, what they might realize from the business, and then we're just trying to be an advisor for them. Sometimes we're having conversations that they may not decide to sell for 5 or 10 years, right? But we're building that relationship with them and just trying to provide them guidance and support. And if they're ready to go now, we are as well. And if they want to wait 5 years for when the time's right for them, we'll be there for them as well.
Right. If they ask the question, I may wait 5 years, but am I crazy in doing that? Is now a good time for me to list if I'm ultimately thinking about getting out? I'm 70 years old. I don't want to be here at 75. My kids aren't interested in the business. is now a good time to sell?
Now's a fantastic time to sell. And we saw some of that pull forward coming out of 2019 into 2020, 2021 as values really ramped up. And dealers who are like, to your point, maybe I'm 3-5 years out, but the valuations have maybe accelerated my decision making.
Sure.
And so, they've decided, let's go ahead. Maybe there's issues that they're concerned about with auto retail. It's definitely a consolidation game.
Yeah,
You've got to be bigger to compete.
That's right.
We see that from the large publics. We see that from the Morgan Automotives of the world who are building a lot of scale, and it's becoming more and more challenging. So if a dealer is kind of considering that, valuations, as Alan said, while they may have come down marginally, they're still very, very strong, well above pre-COVID levels.
Right.
So it's definitely something that is on the radar for them.
Alan, have you found that dealers? It was a while back where dealers were saying, "Hey, I'll sell, but I want to hold on to the real estate." Is that a trend that we saw go away, or is that still out there?
We see it in some instances, Jim, where the family wants to have some ongoing cash flow, and perhaps they want to line up some other real estate investments through a 1031 exchange so they can move that money over on a tax-deferred basis.
Okay.
And you see some buyers being willing to accommodate that request, particularly now when interest rates are high. They might want to wait to acquire that real estate until later. It gets a little harder if the manufacturers are requiring investments to be made on those properties that are being acquired, because a buyer doesn't want to pay for the improvements and then in 5 years do an appraisal on the buildings and pay for them again.
Right.
So it can require some negotiation to make sure it's fair to both sides going forward.
Sure.
But I would say in general, 95% of the time, the buyer is buying the real estate on the same day he's buying the businesses. Kevin, I don't know if you would agree with that assessment.
And Al Hendrickson is an example. They were deciding what to do from estate planning, but ultimately Larry bought the real estate as well with the business.
Okay.
And he's got to do, he's going to be doing some facility improvements there.
Right. And they, as I said earlier, they're on kind of a shopping spree. I mean, they have been just going and going. In a situation like that, and this is probably a question for the mortgage, but do they pretty much say, hey, the management in place, let them run it. They're doing a great job. Or do they try to bring in their own influence and management team? And
I suspect if you were asking Larry and Brett, they would probably tell you it depends on the situation.
That's a good point, yeah.
I mean, if they're buying an underperforming store, or if they've got somebody they're grooming to go into an opportunity. Sure. In this case, they're keeping management. It's obviously an incredibly successful operation, and they want to maintain that consistency and continue to leverage it more. But I would say, I suspect Larry and Brett would say in most cases they try and leave management the same. Don't fix what ain't broke, so to speak.
Right. In a deal like this, is it one of those? Do these deals go down where you say, all right, I've got the seller, and the family wants to go ahead and sell, and you have a very short list of people that you all know in the industry that would be players for something like this.
Right.
Then you just reach out to that and.
Right. So one of the goals in that process, to your point, is trying to identify who do we think are the best buyers. We're not going to shotgun this transaction out to everyone.
Yeah.
Who do we think has the capacity to close it?
Sure.
Who's going to get approved, as Alan was talking about from a manufacturer perspective? How are they to work with? When we've done transactions together. So we're trying to create a buyer's list that's appropriate for that transaction. And obviously in a deal the size of Al Hendrickson Toyota, you start to narrow the window because it's a very large deal and only certain buyers have the capability to do it. But yes, we're trying to craft that and customize that buyer's list. So if it's a dealer in Missouri, we're working, specific to that region who might be appropriate. It could be a national person, it could be a regional player in that area.
Right. Well, for dealers that are listening to us have this conversation on this very topic, now might just be the time to sell. I mean, there's a lot of people that think that the franchise system is under attack. There's a lot of families that are in the industry that I've spoken to that have said, either I sold in the last 3 years or I plan to sell in the next 3 years because of all of the things that are facing the industry right now, and maybe let the conglomerates out there handle it and let us take our nice big check and move on. So these are the kinds of conversations we want to be providing you here at CBT News, because you might be sitting there thinking, now might be the time. Obviously, Haig Partners, these guys have been doing this for a very long period of time. They work with all of the top auto companies out there, incredible reputation, which is what you want in your corner when you're about to make this very, very important move. So Kevin Nill, Managing Director of Haig Partners, and Alan Haig, thank you so much for joining us, President and Founder of Haig Partners. Really appreciate you guys coming in and talking about this. It has made all kinds of headlines, automotive news, everybody's talking about it. I've gotten a few text messages and calls about this very transaction. So congratulations once again. Really appreciate it.
Great to be here.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.